You're listening to Nutrition Matters podcast with Paige Smathers, registered dietitian nutritionist.
Hi everyone, it's Paige Smathers. Thanks so much for being here. Nutrition Matters podcast explores what really matters in nutrition and health with a sensitive and realistic approach. To help support the podcast, please consider making a donation at positive-nutrition.com/podcast. If you find this episode interesting, engaging, or helpful in your life, please consider donating, sharing with friends and family, and leaving a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever podcast app you use to listen to this podcast. You can leave a review about this podcast straight from your podcast app. Search Nutrition Matters Podcast, click reviews, and then write a review. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook if you'd like to have a little more food for thought. Thank you for listening. Hi everybody, welcome back to Nutrition Matters. My name is Paige Smathers and I'm so happy you're here. Today I'm sharing with you one of just such a unique conversation I had about recovery and healing and art, and I think you're going to find this really interesting. So stay tuned, even if you feel like you're someone who's not really artistic or creative per se. We talk about that. We talk about different forms of art that can be valuable in helping us heal our relationships with food and otherwise. So a few announcements I wanted to make. Some of you might already know, but I have rebranded my business, and my business is called Positive Nutrition, and you can find my website at positive-nutrition.com. My blog is moved over there, and any podcast episodes that you want to be able to share the posts with friends, or any links, show notes, those types of things, you can find them on positive-nutrition.com. I'm super excited about that. We're also going to be, over the next few months, building an academy, a Positive Nutrition Academy. So what that means is I'm going to be revamping my online course that I made a while ago, and that will be there. And then I'm putting together a bunch of online trainings in the next, months and years. So keep your eyes out for that, and I'll definitely be keeping you in the loop to see if that might be interesting or a good fit for you. So just a word about my upcoming in-person workshop on April 7th, so that we just have a few more weeks for this mindful eating workshop I'm putting on. That will be April 7th, all day, 8:30 to 5, and we really want you there so much. This will be in Salt Lake City, and if you're anywhere nearby and can drive or make the trip, we would love to have you. If you have any questions about it, let me know. But basically what this is mindfulness training that Noah Rasheta, my co-host, puts on all over the country all the time. And what we're doing for this workshop is he's doing similar trainings that he's done in the past, but we're doing them in context of our relationships with food and our body. And it's going to be really awesome. I cannot wait. So that's April 7th, downtown Salt Lake City, 8:30 to 5. And we would absolutely love to see you there. If you want to sign up, it's mindfuleatingworkshop.com. Get in there. Tickets are selling fast, and there's just a few left at this point. So we'd love to have you there. And if you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out and send me an email or give me a phone call, and I'd be happy to chat with you to see if it could be a good fit. And one other announcement for any registered dietitians listening, I am putting on a really exciting webinar that will be 1.5 continuing education credits. This will be April 18th, and I'll announce more details in the next few weeks, but I wanted to just kind of get the word out there, get it on your calendars if you're interested. This will be $10 for a 1.5 continuing education credits, so you might want to join us. Okay, I think that's it for the announcements. Thank you everybody for being patient with me and letting me share all of that with you and being excited for me to make all these changes and so supportive. So my guest today is Lauren Brereton, who's a registered dietitian and a poet. And we talk all about her kind of story of what things were like with her relationship with food growing up, and how poetry has been a really powerful healing tool for her in her process. And she also reads a few of her favorite and my favorite poems, and we discuss them. And I think this is going to be a really different and fun episode for you all. So I'm excited you're here. Thanks so much for listening, and let's get into my interview with Lauren Brereton. So, Lauren, welcome to Nutrition Matters podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Okay, so let's tell people about how we connected, and then let's get into talking about or introducing a little bit what we're going to be talking about today. So, I was just connected to you, I don't even know, somehow on social media, and I've been kind of watching what you put out there, and I'm like, oh, I love it. It's just such awesome stuff. And so I reached out to you and wanted you to come read some of your poetry to us on the podcast.
Yes, it meant so much to me. I've just got to tell you, because I really haven't been sharing my poetry very long, maybe like a year and a half. So when you reached out to me, I was just kind of in heaven.
Oh,
So this is really exciting for me to be able to, this is probably the first time that I've been able to share it with such a wide audience. So this is going to be really special for me.
so how does that feel? Is that scary? Because this is like your heart, and you never know
Yes.
who's on the other end.
It is. It really is. Well, even sharing it, so like a year and a half ago, I just started putting it on Instagram and felt really, really vulnerable. So I started sharing it. I didn't even share it with my husband first. I started sharing it with my sister, just because we kind of have that relationship. I knew that I could trust her. And then I slowly started letting, one person in and then one person in. And now I'm sharing it with, people on Instagram. And luckily people have been really nice. Like I've been really surprised at the support. So it feels kind of, you find your community and people
Yeah.
have been really supportive, and it's just been really important for me. So it's a little scary. So you guys will just have to bear with me, but I'm so happy to be here. So
Yeah, I can relate to
yeah,
that. I can relate to
yeah,
it feeling a little bit scary. I feel that way. Like every time I put out a podcast, I'm like, whoa, I shared a little bit of my heart there, and I hope people are
right.
good to it. And so, and most people totally are. But yeah, there are that occasional time where you're like, wow, ooh, I'm putting myself out there, and it's so uncomfortable.
Right, right. Yeah, but I'm excited to do it.
So,
So,
yeah, me too. So let's just kind of dive in and talk about kind of set the stage for why you write poetry. And
yeah.
I don't even know if I know this answer. So I'm just interested to hear what brought you down this path.
Yeah. So I started writing. I've always been into journaling, since I was a child. But it's really interesting. I struggled a lot with anxiety and maybe some kind of obsessive compulsive tendencies as a little kid. And journaling was a little bit of an outlet for me, but it's really interesting. I was very some people might say perfectionistic, but I like to say judgmental. I was really judgmental of what I was writing, even as a child. So I would have journals, in elementary school, junior high, where I would write down, my entries. Or little bits of poetry or whatever was on my mind. And then I would rip them out and throw them away because I wanted it just to be perfect. I thought that, I'm like writing a story of my life and it's got to be perfect. And so I thought that was really interesting, kind of reflecting on how I came to this place. Was I was so judgmental of even my, childhood writing and high school writing.
This is what I feel is so hard about writing for me too, is that
Yeah.
perfectionist thing. But as I've gotten older and as my brain has like matured and I'm able to connect more things, I think I've let go of feeling like it needs to be perfect. But I was
Yeah.
just telling someone the other day, like, this is why I like to podcast, because you can explain something in words, in the spoken word, sometimes a little bit easier than it is to just put it down on paper. It seems so permanent.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes. And actually, I'm glad you said that because it really wasn't until I started writing poetry on my phone where I could delete the stuff and play around with like the different structure of the poem that I actually let myself be a little more creative and not so judgmental. So that really didn't happen maybe until 5 or 6 years ago. So
Oh,
even in
wow.
high school, yeah, because it felt really permanent to me. And I was just really judgmental and really critical of myself, growing up. So I think I like that you said that. I like that you
Yeah,
said that.
I feel very proud of myself that I've gotten better at writing, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a tough I can totally relate to what you're saying, the judgment and the kind of like, anxiety of getting it just right. So
Right.
a lot of your poetry revolves around bodies and food, and you're also a registered dietitian.
Uh-huh.
So talk about why that is and why you're exploring those topics. Is it professional? Is it personal? Is it both? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, definitely both. So growing up, I had a really interesting relationship with food. As a kid, you know, after doing a lot of reflection, which poetry has really helped me do, but as a kid, I was just really hungry. I was very active and I was very hungry, and no fault of my mom's at all. This is no judgment or being critical of her, but we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so the conversation around food was always make sure that you don't eat too much because those are your groceries. This is your allotment for the week. And if you eat more than that, then we can't afford it, basically. And so that created this really, my experience isn't nearly, as bad as some people's, but it really created this strange dynamic with food because I would sneak food as a kid and then I would feel really ashamed. I was really ashamed of my hunger, just from a young age, and that kind of, as we socioeconomically climbed in the world, um, it never really went away. And I started running cross country. And again, I hit puberty and my body was changing. And then my mom started getting kind of into health foods. And so then there was this added dynamic, this another layer, and it was just very confusing because I was hungry and I felt like there wasn't enough food to go around. And then I was also trying to be healthy, quote unquote healthy, and not eat too much. And so it started creating a real burden on me. And so that was kind of my elementary, high school age. Then when I got into college is when everything really started coming crashing down. I didn't have somebody making my meals for me. And I had a lot on my plate. I was taking a lot of credits and working full time. And it was my way of coping, really trying to control that aspect of my life or check that off. Like, at least I'm eating well, again, quote unquote, because I wasn't eating well. I wasn't eating enough. And of course that added, that binging and the restricting cycle. And so I really struggled with that in college. And then toward the end, I reached out and got a little bit of help through this group program at school. And so I think that was a turning point for me. And since then, I've just been really working on healing that relationship with food and body. And the poetry has been really important, a really important part of that.
Oh, I love it. We were
Yeah.
talking before we started recording a little bit about how, you know, we tend to be so in our head. And
Hmm.
I think that, on the podcast, we talk a lot about, things you can think about, things you can do, things that might click, things, and I think that there's so much value in those narratives and the wisdom of others and their story and what you can glean from that. But what I'm super excited about talking to you about is this idea of what about art
Yeah.
as a healing thing? Whether you're struggling with food or something else in your life, just the value of kind of engaging that part of yourself and your brain and your creativity that I feel can just do such different things for your process. So, we're going to be talking specifically about your poetry, but I think that anybody listening can also extend this into their own favorite ways of being creative. And maybe they don't
Hmm.
know what those are. And, it doesn't need to be the classic painting or drawing or poetry. It could be cooking comes to mind, but then that's also could be potentially hard for some people in certain places. But there's so many different ways to be creative. One of my favorite ways is I love working on my website. I know that sounds silly, but like I love like the
Oh, yeah.
visual like design and elements, and like I don't consider myself like a super creative painter or something like that, but I think we all have something we're really good at on the creativity and art side, and it's fun to explore that. And I think it's really healing.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that because that's very creative. And again, we can get out of the box, right? Like we have this definition of what creativity means,
Yeah,
and
totally.
and you get out of that box and find what brings that passion and that joy into your life. And I will say, as you were talking, my healing didn't really start happening until I could shut off certain parts of my brain and just express myself, right? And just like get it out on paper. That's when I was being really judgmental and critical of my writing, it was just really reflective of where I was at. And when I could just turn that off and just express myself and turn off that judgment, I think that was really symbolic, I guess.
Mm, for
Yeah,
sure.
because then
And don't
yeah.
you think that that's key to any creative endeavor is just to like
Oh,
let go
yeah.
of judgment, right? So, I mean, I think about this podcast. This is a total creative outlet for me, and we were talking again before we recorded, and I said, "Hey, I'm not a perfectionist about this. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to
Thank
say
goodness.
all the right things." And I think that's the reason that I can even do this is because I have that attitude towards it. When it needs to be perfect, it's paralyzing.
Oh my gosh, so paralyzing. Yeah, you can't move forward. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I just think our creative juices flow when we let go of judgment. But also, creative juices flow, but also just maybe our process of becoming and growing and evolving and learning, It's
Oh
tough to do that
yeah.
when we're so critical all the time.
That's right, because that's what we're here to do. Nobody's going to reach perfection, right? And so when we set those standards, I mean, and this is body image or in our work or in any aspect of our life, when we set those standards up for ourselves, we're going down a path that's not going to lead to joy and fulfillment and peace. We're not going anywhere really.
Yeah,
Like we said, we're staying in one place. We're stuck.
it's so true. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So how do you want to structure this? Do you want to just kind of
Yeah,
go through and read some of your favorites and we'll discuss them?
sure.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds really good. Did you have one that you wanted me to start at, or should I just? Yeah, I'm so sorry. A lot of them aren't titled. I put titles on some of them, but I don't let that hinder me.
Okay, and I
So
just have to say, Lauren, so
yeah.
your initials are LB,
Yes.
and
Isn't that perfect?
it's so funny because like on some of your posts I saw LB and I was like, "Oh, is she talking about pounds?" And I
Pounds.
didn't connect that was your initials, but
Yeah.
a lot of your
Don't you love
writing
that?
is about pounds and weight and food and anyway, symbolic weight and all of that. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing.
I love that you caught that because I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if anybody's gonna catch this
Well,
because I was like,
I
oh,
think
how
I caught it
perfect.
so much that I didn't even know it was your initials. I was like, "Oh, she's talking
Yeah.
about pounds." Kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh, I love that. So this poem, I'll start out with this poem. I wrote it not too long ago, actually, but it's based on an experience that I had in fifth grade that hasn't really ever left
I
me.
love this one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad that you like it. So I'll read it and then maybe we can discuss it afterward.
Okay, perfect.
I want to apologize. Please forgive me for the joke I made at your expense. It was a fat joke, and I was a small girl, and you were alone in a corner, and I was surrounded by friends, and we all laughed at your expense. It's true, I didn't see you there, but that's the problem, isn't it? I didn't see you, and I didn't hear you when you left the room to cry alone in the hallway. But that's the problem, isn't it? I didn't hear you. And they said if she didn't want to be the joke, she should do something about it. But that's the problem, isn't it? This shame, then blame game we play. That's the problem, isn't it?
Ooh, I have literal goosebumps.
That was that one. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's such an emotional like scene that you're describing.
Yeah.
A girl alone in the corner with another girl with a bunch of friends around her who the
Hmm.
shame and blame thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was in this particular instance, I was I was kind of a class clown when I was little. I really liked getting people's attention. That was my way of feeling comfortable in a crowd. And I remember this particular girl. She was so sweet. We were friends, actually, acquaintances, and she was quiet. And she was working on a project in the corner, and I had made a fat joke. Just not even relating, like not even realizing that it was making fun of her in particular.
Mm.
And I could see when I noticed her, I could see the pain on her face. And my teacher pulled me aside. My wonderful teacher pulled me aside and kind of reprimanded me as a child and said, "That's not right. You can't do that." And it's never left me. It's never left me. And the line about, and they said if she didn't want to be the joke, she should do something about it. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that as an excuse for the way that we treat people, especially people in larger bodies. Well, if they didn't want to have that health problem, they should do something about it. And I'm like, well, the more we learn, and maybe you can fill in the blanks because I'm still learning a lot about this, but from what I understand, the more we learn about stigma and the way that we treat people, the more we understand how much that affects their health.
Absolutely.
Right?
And also, like, just
Yeah.
just from my experience of working with people in larger bodies and hearing their stories and really having them feel safe enough to tell me what they're really doing and what's really going on in their lives, many of them are trying to not have the body that they have actively, like
Yes.
actively trying
Right?
and falling victim to the dieting cycle and
Mm-hmm.
we meaning maybe society assumes some things about certain people that really, when you sit down and hear their story, it's just not
Yeah.
true.
No, you're so right. You're so right. And I had actually listened to a podcast. Now I'm forgetting which one. I listened to so many,
That's
so I,
okay.
I
They all mold
apologize.
together.
They do. But it had one of the Biggest Loser contestants,
Oh, yeah.
right? And she was explaining how on the Biggest Loser, they actually made up the stories of their lives. So to kind of
Whoa.
fit the narrative that we're telling of people in larger bodies. And
Whoa.
so, she was in real life a personal trainer, but they didn't add that. Of course, they didn't add that because then it messes up what we believe about people in larger bodies. And I just thought that is so disgusting when we start, tearing it apart and realizing that we are shaming people and then we're blaming them and it's creating this cycle, right? And
And it's harming
and
their health.
yes,
Our mistreatment of people is harming them, like physically,
yes,
emotionally, mentally. And I just can't imagine feeling like you're in that constant state of fight or flight because you never know what's going to be said to you or what jokes are going to be made about you. I was just talking to a
right.
client yesterday about this, and I said, I don't have the need to walk through life, you know, feeling like I'm constantly having to apologize for being me. And I also
Hmm.
don't have the need that a lot of my clients have where they have to give people the benefit of the doubt constantly because they're constantly being bullied or mistreated or have really rude comments made toward them or about them or behind their back. And
Oh
I hear
yeah.
so many of my clients just say, I know that that's coming from a good place and I can see where they're coming from.
Mm.
And I just think it's so beautiful when they say that, but then it makes me sad because people on the other side aren't forced to see where they're coming from. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It really puts them in this difficult position where they have to come to terms with it, but then other people don't even have to be self-aware enough to realize that you're harming people
Exactly.
by the things that you're saying. Yeah, especially, I was working at the VA for a while, right after my internship, and quickly became disillusioned by my role as a dietitian there. When all I was getting sent were these wonderful veterans with so many other health concerns rather than weight, right? And it was just the way that they were being treated was I didn't have all of the research to tell me, hey, this is actually harmful, or, I didn't have that in my back pocket. It just was wrong. It just felt wrong. And we don't need to have research to let us know that this isn't right.
Oh, that, you know what? That is a really good point. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
why is it now that we're talking about this? Because there's all this research being done. Why can't we just critically look at this and say, this isn't right, regardless of whether
Hmm.
or not research says, like my heart and like my
Yeah.
soul is telling me this isn't a
This
good
is
way to
wrong.
treat people. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a lesson we should have all learned in fifth grade, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So it's interesting.
I really love that poem so
Oh,
much.
thank you so
And
much.
that's
I'm really
brave.
glad.
It's brave of you to be vulnerable enough to share a mistake you've made, you
Oh
know?
yeah, I've made so many.
Oh gosh, of course. I mean, me too, of course.
I'm like, I'm like, all my poems could be about mistakes I made.
Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
for you, writing, let's just take that poem. Writing that
Mm.
poem, what does that do for you in terms of healing? Like, can you explain that, or kind of take someone there who's maybe not quite understanding what the power of art
Yeah,
and creation can do?
yeah. Well, so I've been thinking a lot about this question since you sent it over last week, and I don't know. I came up with this little kind of two-liner. Have you ever heard the Emily Dickinson poem, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul"?
I don't
I
think
don't know if
so.
you have. So that's one of my favorite poems. But the thing that kept coming to mind in regards to this question is pain is the thing with claws that scratches to the surface. That's kind of the thought that I had. And in regards to healing, we all experience really painful emotions, including when we do something wrong and we feel guilty, right? Or when we don't quite treat people kindly or treat ourselves kindly. We all experience these painful emotions. And if we don't find a way to release it or express it, it's going to claw its way to the surface of your life. There's no getting around it. I think it was Freud who said something like, depression is anger turned inward,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So these emotions, we have to have someplace to release them, right? And so for this particular poem, I've carried that with me for a long time. I mean, I'm 27 now. That was in fifth grade, so I've had that on my shoulders for a long time, that I hurt somebody and I never had the opportunity to say sorry or apologize or recognize that even what I did was so hurtful. And now that I'm older and I know better, it was a chance for me. I don't know how to get in contact with this girl again. I've forgotten her last name. Um, but it's a chance for me to release that, right? And
Yeah.
to let myself have a moment where I know better now. I can do better now. And I don't have to carry that with me anymore. So I think that's, with any painful emotion that we experience, or happy ones. I mean, not all my poems are sad, but a lot of them are. But that's what you can do with them so that they don't pop up in other ways, in your life. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Hopefully
Yeah.
that makes
No,
sense.
totally. And you know what? It makes me think about this idea I've been kind of wrestling with for a lot of years. I teach a nutrition group in a local drug and alcohol rehab or treatment center. And um, I've interacted and engaged with folks in recovery for long enough that I've learned a few things about what's like how that works for them, and what's the common sort of thread that, you know, a stay-at-home mom who's 35, and then the man who's 75, and then the kid who's 18, like what binds them all together? What is this about?
Yeah.
Like just
Hmm.
trying to sort of figure it out. Not that you can figure it totally out, but just for
Right?
myself and my own knowledge.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because I kind of realized that so much of our, like the root of our struggles are running away from pain, where
Hmm.
it hurts so much to be in pain, whether it's physical or emotional, that we will like do anything we can to not feel that way. and we think that it's going to help us. We're like, okay, if I just don't feel this way, then I'll be better. But really, avoiding the pain creates so many more problems and creates so much more pain. And I think
Oh,
the
yeah.
only answer is to feel it. And I don't know if I'm making sense or just rambling, but I feel like that's what you're saying is this has been something you've had inside of you for a long time, and feeling sorry about it and feeling guilty, and being able to just feel it and express it helps it not be anything more than just something you regret in your life and something maybe you can move on with. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think there's so much beauty in art and creativity because you're able to take something that's painful and maybe ugly, something that happened to you
So
or
true.
something that you did, and turn it into something that's beautiful and grow from it and learn from it and find meaning in it. And yeah, I think that's the point of this life. I think that's the point of life to
I know.
uh,
And
to
and
experience it.
art binds us together no matter what our beliefs
Yes.
are or our political leaning. Like it's something that we can all, like that poem you just read, like I can relate to that. I've been on both sides of that, and it's just connecting and healing to know that you're not the only one who's like, oh, I realize maybe I made some mistakes as a kid and said the wrong things and
Yeah.
probably really hurt people.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that too, the part of connection, because like I said, I haven't really shared my work until recently, the last year and a half. And again, it's almost like it's taken me to another level in the healing process where now I'm finding a community, and now I'm
Oh,
connecting
yeah.
with people that I maybe wouldn't have connected with. I've had, people from elementary school, people from junior high, who, I'm friends with who follow me on Instagram, who have reached out or made a comment that it's like, I would have never known that you struggle with that too. And it just brings humanity back into my vision, right? Like I can see that people are just human too. And
Community is
and we're
such a
all
big
just
deal.
human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really is
such a big
a
deal.
really big deal for healing, just for how we work as human beings. Like we need each other, you know?
Yes,
And
yes,
there's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone or the only one. That's
right,
pretty awful.
right. And it's a lie, right?
Yeah, it
Because
is.
we're not alone and we're not the only one. And I think I just listened to your podcast with Anna Sweeney
Oh
that
yeah.
was, I think, out
10
yesterday.
episode 105 for anyone
Ah,
listening. Yeah.
yes, so good because you were talking about interdependence and like connectivity and how we value independence in this culture and society, but that we rely on each other. We need each other. And the things that we say affect each other, and the things we do affect one another. And realizing that we are one large community of people, that's an important realization that I've made,
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
through this work too.
Yeah. It's so I love the idea of connection. I think that
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful thing, and connection with ourselves, connection with our environment, with each other. Um, yeah, it's a big deal. So,
Yes.
can you read the next one down? Just the one. This is you. It doesn't have a title, but you say this poem is
The
meant to be
child's.
read from the child's perspective. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So a little backstory of this. I don't know if you've heard of Lucy Aphramore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe yes. Okay. So it was either her or another. I listened to so many podcasts. It was either her or another poet who was on the Everybody podcast.
Uh-huh.
And they had shared a poem that they had written in the child's perspective. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's powerful. I want to try my own. So that's a little backstory on that.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
I don't understand how a baby still in its mama's belly can be wrong, but I was. I was all wrong. I guess I wasn't supposed to be so big because the doctors told my mom I'd have to be cut out of her. They told her she wouldn't be able to do it on her own. I was that wrong. And as a baby, I had big thighs and big cheeks and rolls, lots and lots of rolls. And people would say things like, look at those thunder thighs, and we know someone has a healthy appetite. And I don't know why they said those things because I don't remember choosing to be hungry. I just was, I guess. When I got a little older, my baby fat never went away. It just stuck around. Maybe to keep me warm. I heard that's why animals carry fat because it keeps them warm. But anyways, it just stuck to me. And I didn't really know that was bad until the other kids said so. They said I was bigger and that meant I was unhealthy and lazy. But I wasn't lazy. I liked to run and play too. Until they said I looked silly because my belly shook. I didn't really like running after that. And then for school, my mom started packing me a special lunch. But there was nothing really special about it, except that I didn't get my cookies anymore. I got carrot sticks instead. Nobody wants to trade carrot sticks, so I was pretty much stuck with them. That was when I started feeling hungry. When I'd get home from school, I'd sneak food from the pantry and eat it in my room, but mom always found out and I'd feel really bad about it, so I stopped doing that. Now I do all I can to be good. I exercise with my mom and I make sure I don't eat a lot and I get clothes that make me look small. I don't know why. That's just the way I have to do things. I guess there's some bodies that are wrong and some that aren't. And I guess I was just born with the wrong type of body.
Ooh.
I know. Heavy, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so is this based on personal experience, or is this kind of just things you've heard, narratives you've heard, or a
Yeah.
combination of the two?
It's a combination. So even as I was reading it now, there was a line that kind of stuck out that I'm pretty sure I've written in one of my journals before. I was like, oh my goodness, that sounds like something I would have written as a child, but definitely a combination. So I think I had mentioned before that I used to sneak food from the pantry, right? And then my mom would find out, and I would feel so much shame because I was hungry, and and I, and that's when I learned that it wasn't a good thing, right, to be hungry. And so a lot of it is personal experience, and some of it are just, experiences of friends or siblings. The thing that I think is so sad about this, again, another sad one, but I think the thing that's so sad about it is that it's really not out of the realm of possibility. Like, this is what happens all the time to our kids, and they don't have the verbiage, they don't have the words to express. They just trust that we know what we're doing and that we're taking care of them. And these are the messages that they're getting, and that makes me very sad.
Well, and you just did such a beautiful job of describing what I hear so often in my office,
Yeah.
from the adult's perspective, saying, when I was a child, this is what happened. I know my parents loved me, but this is how I perceived the
Hmm.
actions, and this is how I'm digesting it now, and
Yes.
just how the most well-meaning adults can do some things that to a child that really are hard to deal with later.
That's right. That's right. And they really are well-meaning. It's just it's very tricky because we have to, when you're going through the healing process too, you have to find the balance between and being able to be angry and hurt that those things happened to you and know that that wasn't right. And then at the same time, have this understanding that, wow, they're living in the same culture that we're living in. That actually, the part where I realized my parents are living in the same culture, that didn't come till later. I was pretty hurt for a little while, I was pretty hurt. I was like, wait a second, I was just hungry. I needed more food. Yeah, yeah.
So the part of that poem that really sticks out to me is just how I think it's a she, it's you, maybe, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah. Uh-huh.
like just never felt anything bad about her body. That fat just the baby fat just stuck, or whatever she says, and
Hmm.
um, but then she learns. You do such a good
Hmm.
job of explaining the process of, oh, I see how things work in this world, and
Yeah.
I see how I'm treated, and I see what the kids say, and I'm just like them, but they can't see that in me. I like to play
Right.
too, but they make fun of me, and it's just
Right.
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. I read it to my sister and she's like, I hate it. I hate that poem. She's like, I love it and I hate it so much. And
I
yeah, I
can
mean,
totally
because
see
that's
why.
because that's a child who's trying to make sense of the things that they're being told. And even the line, maybe this fat is to keep me warm because that's what I learned in school, that animals have fat to keep them warm. And it's heartbreaking to see that internal struggle, them trying to make sense of it without having the tools to make sense of it. And all of us who have experienced that, because so many of us have, when you put yourself in a child's perspective, or write yourself a letter, or write yourself a poem from the child's perspective, you can look back and have so much compassion. And I've had, done activities like this where I've written to myself as a child, or written from this perspective, and just cried because it was just so sad, for that little girl to have experienced that. And you know what? Now I'm stronger because of it, and now I'm kind of coming out on the other side, but that writing process was really helpful for me.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Just the another thing I wanted to mention about the poem is just how it begins with, she was, even before she was born, she had the wrong kind of body. Um, and then it ends that way too. And it's, I mean, again, just like so heartbreaking, but really sheds light on
Yeah.
the way so many people receive messages about their body their whole life. And,
Hmm.
this is what makes some of the work that I do really super challenging, is like, my message to my clients is, hey, your body isn't broken. Our job is to learn how to listen to it and trust it and honor it. And that assumes that they believe that about their body,
Yeah.
and how hard is it for someone who's been told their whole life that their body's wrong to believe that? And so how can someone how can we ask someone to tap into honoring their body and taking good care of themselves when they fundamentally, like, the premise there is just off for them? Like, they're like, well, my body can't be trusted. My body is
Yeah.
wrong. My body is defective. That's some deep stuff for therapists. You know what I
That's right.
mean?
That's right. I'll try to remember it, but I wrote a poem kind of about that too. Something along, I might mess up my own poem, but I'll give it a shot. It was, please tell me just one more time that this body is a safe place to live, because years of experience have told me otherwise. And that's kind of what it reminds me of, right? Like, for years, your body hasn't been a safe place to live. Whether that's people telling you that your body's wrong, or maybe you've had sexual trauma, or maybe you've had some of these really, really difficult things to work through. Just one more time. I just need to hear it one more time, and one more time, and one more time. And I don't know how many times people are going to have to hear it, or how many times people are going to have to express that pain. But with each time, I think that burden is lifted.
Mm.
So it's just difficult. This is just not easy stuff, right?
No, oh my goodness. It is not. It really isn't, but
No,
it's
no.
beautiful in its own way, to just be able
Yeah,
to, like, say so much in so little. And
yeah,
yeah, it's
yes,
awesome. So tell
yeah.
me, do you have a favorite happy poem, just to lighten up the
Okay,
mood?
I know, right? We're getting real heavy. Let's see here. Let me see if I can
Not
find
that
one
heavy's
here.
bad. I'm not
Yeah,
afraid of, like, hard conversations.
yes,
It's just, I'd love to hear, a wide variety of what you
yeah.
do.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, definitely. I'm like, let's bring the energy up a little bit more. This one is one of my favorites. It's real short and real simple. We are Russian dolls carrying within us a million selves. Do I envy your youth? How can I when she's living inside me?
Oh my gosh.
So I like that one. Yeah.
Tell me about that one. I mean, I'm like still
Yeah.
digesting the first two lines. So
Yes.
read it one more
Yeah,
time.
let me slow down too.
No, that's
My
okay.
mom was like, when you read these poems, make sure you go slow, and I'm kind of forgetting because I'm having so much fun.
It's okay. It's just, yeah, the first, the million selves it was like, whoa, yeah, that's
Yeah.
so cool.
Like, wait a second. We are Russian dolls carrying within us a million selves. Do I envy your youth? How can I when she's living inside me? I like that one. I like that one because this one I was writing for the older women in my life who are struggling right now, aging. And I've heard so many comments, such wise, beautiful, smart, like innovative women who are struggling with the aging process. And I just think that they're forgetting that youth isn't lost to them, right? Like each person that we are and each person that we become in this life, that you don't lose that. That just is an added layer to who you are. And so how can we, when you think about it that way, how can you envy youth or how can you envy beauty or how can you envy, those things when you know that that's part of who you are? So I like that one because it's a reminder to me as I age that you don't need to worry about it. Like you are beautiful and complete and whole. Yeah.
And oh, I mean, I don't even know if I can add any words to this that will add any value, but I'll try.
Yeah.
Um, the idea that a million selves exist within you is like it's so true because I see our process of growing older and maturing and aging as, we're the same person, but we
Yeah.
really do have different selves that are part of our past and part of our history. And I think, yeah, how can we envy someone else when we are them? Like we're all this community, but then also like I was that little girl and she's still inside of me. And so how do I envy my little girls for being so youthful and young or something? It's like, well,
Yeah.
my young Paige is still a part of me, even though I've had a million selves from then until now.
That's right. That's right. And I think that so much of our work, and maybe you'll agree, is helping people reframe the way that they think about all of these things. Like we need to find different language and we need to find like a different structure to work within. So where before, we think about age like each year comes and then we lose it, right? Like 30 comes and then we don't get to hold on to 29 anymore. And then 31 comes and we lose 30. But it's not, it's kind of like a progressive thing where it's like a tree, where each like layer is added and we become stronger and wiser and more valuable with each experience and with each, layer of
Oh,
life.
so true. And that idea of having a million selves within you is kind of coming back to that idea of connection where
Yeah.
we're connecting who came before us because they're all a part of what makes us us, our ancestors, our grandparents, our people who have passed on before us, and then
Yeah.
the many generations to come that are actually literally physically contained inside of our bodies, which is so cool. Like the idea of
I
like we
love
have that
that.
power as human beings to create life, which is the ultimate creation.
Yes, I've never thought about it in that way, and I love that you made that connection. That's really beautiful. I love that. Hmm.
That's why when you first read it, I was like, oh wait, hold on, I need more time to think
You're
about this
like, yeah, you
million
kind of
selves
do, right?
idea.
You're like, what?
Yeah, that's
It takes a
so.
lot of time to think about sometimes and digest. I mean, this isn't easy stuff to really like think about. But if you like thinking about this stuff, then poetry could be a good outlet for
Yeah, for
you.
sure. So so I like that we talked a little bit about youth and being young and making mistakes and learning and what it's like to be a child because we all remember that. And I like this poem because it really contrasts to this idea of getting older um,
Yeah.
and embracing aging. So you mentioned a little bit about your thoughts about that idea of embracing getting older and also wishing and hoping for the older women in your life
Hmm.
to love that about themselves. Um,
Right.
I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I feel the same way. Like I just like, okay, I think it's because I have, people of all walks of life as clients, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of women who will seek me out, who are going through menopause or who are postmenopausal and wanting to navigate food because things get kind of tricky and there's all this pressure about
Right.
weight and aging and all of that. So this, I think this is on my mind because of what I see. But what I just wanted to say is I don't know what it is, but there's something about an older woman who comes in
Yeah.
and sits down with me, and I just feel her experience and her wisdom and her just like peace with herself, and her face is so beautiful to me, and her, you know, gray hair is exactly what I hope my gray hair look. You know what I just think
Yes.
I think it's such a beautiful thing. And I don't know, this might be why it's been on my mind because I've had just a few clients in that age range where I'm just like they are,
Yeah.
I hope that I
Amazing. Yeah.
radiate what they radiate because it's so different than a young person.
It is. It is, and it's meant to be different. And we need women who are aging, who are wanting to age, right? But we live, I've thought about this a lot too, obviously, but we live in this society where at, 65, we're retiring people, where they have the most experience and the most wisdom, and they could probably help the companies that they're working out at the most at that age in their life. And we're retiring them and we're telling people, we have no use for you anymore. And we're putting people in retirement homes. And we don't, I think in our culture, we don't really have a place for for our aged. And so no wonder it's a terrifying idea to age, because all we're seeing are people being thrown to the wayside, like they have nothing to contribute anymore, when that's just not true.
And it's also like you're in this big hurry as a teenager to grow up so that you can, you know, be an adult and date and be cute and be desired or whatever, maybe, let's
Yes.
just say. And
Yeah.
then it's like, it's almost like you get to this certain age where it's like, well, now you want to stop aging and you want to stay exactly where you are. And
Yeah.
it's just like you're constantly wishing your life away. And it's like, you're just getting good.
Right? Oh my gosh, I love that you're just getting good.
Like seriously. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not, I'm not old by any means, but like I look at myself in the mirror these days and I'm just like, gosh, I'm like getting some wrinkles
yeah,
and my face looks very different than what it did in, high school, let's say. And it's cool. Like I'm like I like it.
yeah,
I think I'm getting better with age. And I feel like maybe I've said this on the podcast recently, so please forgive me. I forget where I say things.
yeah.
But my husband is getting gray hair and like I think it's awesome.
Yes.
I think it's great.
It
I'm excited
is.
about aging.
It is, and I think we should be excited about aging, right? Because I am better today than I was 10 years ago and 15 years ago. And I think it, again, it's very symbolic, this desire to stop time um, at 30 or 35, whatever that number is for you that's really hard for you to get past. Well, if you think that you want to stop time and stop the way that you look, don't you think there's other things in your life that are going to be halted? Like, don't you think other progress, other areas of your life are going to stop their progression at that age as well? So I think you can't have a youthful glow and wisdom and experience,
Yeah, and you
you
can't
know?
have it all. Like I think it's just
No.
true in life. Like, I live in Salt Lake and I love it and there's so many amazing things about it. Like
Yeah.
we have the mountains and everybody loves to be outside and it's so amazingly beautiful and we get to ski in the winter because it's so accessible. But it's like I miss my ocean. I'm from California. Like I
Oh
miss
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And but it's like I can't have all of that. I just have to have you have certain things when you make certain decisions or you're in certain phases of life, and it's like you can't have, yeah, like you were saying, like the wisdom and the just kind of peace that you can have as a person who's older versus like as a young person, you don't get to have that, but you get to have other things. It's just like you got to just take them for what they are and when they come.
That's right. That's right. And kind of going back to that poem, just remembering that keeping those experiences with you, right?
Yeah.
Like keeping those internally with you and having that calm sense of self, that was that time, and now is this time, and now it's this stage of life and this season of life, and that's beautiful, and that's okay. And I have work to do at this stage of life,
And also
you know.
like my versions of myself still exist within me,
That's right.
like always. And so that it's not like you don't need to long for them. They're still there. You can still
That's right.
like you were talking about with the poem you wrote from the child's perspective, that required you to
Hmm.
kind of like get in touch with that version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
So cool. Oh, I love it.
Yes.
So, let's talk about the one that starts with mother.
Okay. Mother, who lived in worlds where beauty was your currency, I'm sorry, Mother, that you lived in times when thinness was your power.
Okay, so there's actually there was a study called Intergenerational Transmission of Parent Encouragement to Diet from Adolescence into Adulthood. And the highlights of it is basically it's it's really drawing this big causation between encouraging your teen to diet, and this is actually really timely with the whole Weight Watchers. If you haven't heard, Weight Watchers is offering their program for free for teens, and it's blatantly obvious that this is all an effort to increase revenue because they know that if they can get teens in their program at a young age, they're far more likely to kind of be in their program forever. So this study shows that parents who encourage their teens to diet is bad for them, obviously. And then it also like draws the link between not only is it going to be negative for your child, but also it's going to be negative for your grandchild. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So this is such, and I don't blame our mothers or old, generations before us from the social climate we've inherited. It's nobody's fault. We're all a part of these systems. But I think that this is just such an important thing to talk about, this idea of generational sort of how we pass on our traumas to our generations, and how we need to be aware of that, and we need to
Hmm.
actively try to be the one that breaks that in our own families. And we can't do that on a cultural level unless we all individually make the choices to actively go against it. So that's just what that made me think of. But tell me more
Yeah.
about what you'd like to add.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that was perfect. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I had mentioned this before. So my mom kind of went through. I definitely don't want to like diagnose her because that's not fair at all, but an orthorexic type stage where we were really trying to eat quote unquote clean. Um, and and for a while, and that was through puberty for me. And so I, like I said, I was really really hungry, and so it added this really complicated layer into my relationship with food. Is I wanted to eat well, but I really wanted to make my mom proud because she would compliment me, and she's probably going to listen to this, and it's probably going to break her heart. But she would compliment me when I looked a certain way, when I was at a certain weight, and I would get a lot of compliments. And she's since changed that, and she's been doing really, really well. But for a time, I was really hurt by that. I was really hurt that that kind of was part of what I, like you said, what I inherited from her. And she really struggled. She did really struggle. And she lived, I mean, if you look at the time that she lived, I mean, she was living through her adolescent years were through Twiggy and through all of those messages. And so this poem was for her because I think I had to come to a place where I realized, oh, my beautiful, strong mother who's been through all of this and has made it to the other side herself. I just think that takes incredible strength, and I wanted a way to say I'm sorry that that's what you experienced too, and to have that kind of compassion for my mom really helped me kind of get over the hurt that I was feeling because of some of the things that I learned from her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like it's so systemic and we're all a part of these
Yes.
systems and we
Yeah.
don't even know it. Like a lot of times
Oh,
we're
yeah.
not even aware that there could be another paradigm, you
Oh
know?
my gosh. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and and maybe I'll just like mention, maybe we can talk about this a little bit. Systemic, that word for a really long time. I had a hard time understanding that word, if that makes any sense, or like seeing it in my own life. But now I'm seeing like seeing how prevalent it is really in our systems and our healthcare systems, especially. I have a very close person in my life who went to the doctor several years ago and said, he looked her up and down, gave her that kind of shaming look when she got weighed, and she looked at him and she said, "Oh, I've really been trying to lose weight. I've really been trying." And he said, "Well, just shut your mouth. Well, just close your mouth." you know and when you hear stories like that, or actual systems where at the VA, if you were under or I'm sorry, over a certain weight, if you were hit the BMI scale at a certain place, then you were required, it was part of the system, part of the program, to be taken over to the dietitian, right? Taken to the principal's office. Like that's what I felt like. No. So I mean, there are actual like systems in place, like actual protocols in hospitals that require doctors to treat people in larger bodies a certain way. And so when you say, yeah, that this is part of the system that we're living in, it's very much a system right now, especially in healthcare.
So you talked about in your poem that beauty is your currency. Um,
Yes.
that's so sad. Honestly,
Yes.
that's just like if you really just let that sink in, that
Yeah.
is because that's not what a man's currency is. I mean, maybe
No.
a little bit his looks, but it's not everything.
No, and you know where I got that line? I was inspired by that song, the you don't need money when you have a face like that, do you, honey? That one, da 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 da. I want you to be my girl. It was like I forget the singer, but there's a line, yes, that you don't need money when you have a face like that, do ya, honey? And I used to love that song. And I used to like, I internalized, I knew what he was saying. And I remember as a, junior high, high school student being like, oh yeah, I can get anything I want if I've got a face like that and a body like this, right? Like that is literally, we are literally being told that that's our currency, that we don't
Yeah,
need
in
money
no
if you
uncertain
have a
terms.
face like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
Yeah, man, so many good topics. I loved this. This went totally better than I could have ever hoped for.
Yay.
I
I'm
love
so glad.
the idea of kind of thinking outside the box in your own process of healing and evolving and growing. So whether that's recovery from an eating disorder or whether you just listen because you like these concepts, but you don't really struggle to the depth of full blown eating disorder. I think we all have areas where we need to heal and where we need to learn about ourselves. And I think it's great to listen to podcasts. I'm not saying don't listen, but at the same time, like sometimes turn it off and like go inside and do express your own thoughts and opinions. And I know that poetry is just one way of doing that. And so I love the idea of highlighting just a different way of using our brain and a different way of being creative and healing. So thank you so much for offering all of this up into the world. It's so great.
That means so much to me. This was better than I could have hoped for too. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but this has been so nice, so good for me. So thank you for having me on here. This has been great.
You're welcome. Well, just before we end, let's just take a moment for you to talk about how people can, get their hands on your poetry and follow you and kind of keep in touch.
Yes. Well, I'm just on Instagram right now. So it's lauren.brereton.poetry.
I'll link to that to make it easy for people.
Yes. So I'm just there. I'm just in one place. I tried to make it easy on myself. I like that. Yeah. I like that one the best. So, but please, like if anybody listening wants to share a poem or discuss it more, like I love this stuff. I really live for it. So please like reach out to me that way on Instagram. I would love that. So
okay,
that's how you can find it. Yes.
And would you want to, I always like to give people the chance to add anything else if we didn't cover something that you wanted to say or in conclusion or summarizing.
Yeah. I think as far as poetry goes, it can be for everybody. And if you're not really sure where to start, just getting your thoughts on paper, just do something like free verse, like literally just get your pen to paper and just start writing words that are what you're thinking or what you're feeling, or it's really easy to start that way. And sometimes it's not going to come out, beautiful,
perfectly, like we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, but just give it a shot and see if that's kind of like a venue that you want to take. Because for me personally, it's been just a really wonderful experience. So I like to encourage everybody to give it a shot at least. And it might be your thing and it might not be, but I think everybody should try it. That's what I'll leave everybody
with. I'm all about evangelizing your own favorite form of art. Yes. I evangelize my knitting all the time.
I love that. I love that.
Everyone should knit. It's so great.
I just have to start that up. So.
Yeah, do it. It's so fun. Well, thanks so much, Lauren, for being here and for sharing. Like, I really do feel like it's really brave for you to come and share your heart and your experiences and your wisdom around these topics and these poems, because I know that that's tender, and I really, really am honored that you'd be willing to share it with us. So thank you.
Gosh, thank you so much.
Well, I sincerely hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you haven't already, please go ahead and leave a review on iTunes. Thanks again so much for listening, and we'll see you soon for another episode.